Okay, so welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. I also would like to specifically welcome, I'm seeing at least one colleague from the University of Amsterdam. This is great that you're joining. I hope we can have collaborate meetings like this again and continue with this practice. And I also would like to especially welcome Tobias Dienlin, who is not only a great colleague of mine, but also a great friend. We both did our PhD at the same department and at the same chair, which is the chair of media psychology of Sabine Trepte at the University of Hohenheim. So I'm very happy to that he's joining us today to talk about a very important topic, which I believe concerns all of us, not just because it is just a big trend and a big topic in our discipline, but also because it has become also quite an important aspect of our daily research and is now also acknowledged in a lot of the tenure track criteria, for example, as well as in the general promotion criteria. So it is something that we all have to deal with at one point. And I think Tobias is a great person to talk about this because he has been practicing open science since the very beginning. I remember that I particularly in the beginning, learned most of it from Tobias, as it was my sort of older colleague from which I could learn. And he very recently also led and had sort of the master hat on a paper that is now published in the Journal of Communication. Perhaps you have seen it. It was published officially I think last month, January. But it was already available as an advanced online publication for quite a while, and it has also sparked quite some conversation. It was a large-scale paper in a way because it is authored by more than 30 authors worldwide, outlining an agenda on how to implement open science practices in the field of communication. It has sparked also a special issue that will be published sometime soon in Journal of Communication, where hopefully many colleagues will respond to it, will add to it, and perhaps also improve aspects of it. So we are looking forward to that. And since then, I also think Tobias has done quite a lot of talks at various departments about what is open science, why is it important, and most interestingly, perhaps to us also, how can we actually implement open science practices, not just in our research, but also in teaching and outreach. Before Tobias starts, I just want to give you a little bit of an introduction to himself. He is a study psychologist. He did a PhD, as I said before, at the University of Hohenheim. His main research interest is privacy. That's where we connect mostly, I would say. And but he also studies communication effects on well-being, as well as anything related to open science and this type of meta-scientific questions. He is now, since last year, an assistant professor of interactive communication at the University of Vienna. And I'm really, really happy that you're joining us today. So thank you for coming, and we're looking forward to your talk.
Yeah, thank you very much, and hi to everyone. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for this really nice and gentle introduction. I'm really happy that I can talk about open science because, as Philip has already mentioned, it's really something that I deeply care about, and I think it's a really important discussion and conversation that we should be having, and I'm really glad that we are currently also really starting to have. And so I'm really happy that the FU is interested in this topic, and I know that you are already implementing quite a lot of these topics. So maybe there won't be so many new things for some, but for others, I hope I can share some new thoughts on open science. First of all, in the spirit of open science, you can download the slides here on this link, or if you are more modern, you can just use this QR code, and then you should be directed to the slides. And if not, you can then check them later to see and to reread everything. Today, I'll talk about the following things. First, I'll start with a brief introduction, why we need open science. This will not be the main emphasis. I think this is maybe actually the most important question, but it's not the focus of my talk today. But of course, it's something feel free to ask questions about afterwards in the Q&A. I then start with 5 tips for open science and research. Those will be the main part. And then there'll also be 5 tips for open science in teaching and outreach. And these are more just short points that I mentioned. And if you feel happy, if you're interested, we can go deeper in the discussion. And I will end with a short conclusion. All right, so first question always has to be asked, why do we need open science? Well, first, I think because we have a problem. It's becoming increasingly clear that in the social sciences, there are many studies that don't replicate, and replication is the bedrock of empirical social sciences. If we conduct a study, other researchers, if they replicate it, they should get to the same result. But it shows that it started in psychology that not a lot of studies replicate, or not as much or as many as we would hope. Currently, figures are around 64% of the recent overview, but yeah, some studies or large-scale approaches are around 30%, others around 80%. But overall, it seems the figure is too low. We don't really know what replicates and what not, what is robust and what's not. And especially in communication, I think we haven't really started conducting exact replication, so that it's just a normal thing that if Philip does a study, that another colleague just redo it, and to see whether the results can be replicated. Next problem is that we as researchers, we are human beings and we commit errors. That should be expected, but and should be perfectly normal. But without open science, we don't really know where the mistakes are, and we can't really help one another correcting our mistakes. And then there's the thing that a lot of researchers commit QRPs. It's a very common abbreviation nowadays. It's questionable research practices. So not necessarily something that is illegal or criminal, but something where there are a lot of gray zones and where we know that together this is not good if we do too many of these QRPs or any of these. I think the two most prominent ones are harking, which means that we first conduct a study, we run all the analyses, and afterwards we then write the introduction, we write the hypotheses, and as you know, then most of our hypotheses are then confirmed. But obviously that's not how the hypothetical deductive research principle was designed. We first state the hypothesis, and then we see whether we were right or not. And yeah, the next big one is p-hacking. I'm sure most of you have heard of it. It means that we try to get our results below a p-value of 5%, because below 5% is considered statistically significant and an important finding. And sometimes we aren't there yet. We have maybe a value of 7%, so we try a different analysis technique, and all of a sudden we had 4.3%, and then we cry Eureka and we submit our paper. Together, this, why is that? Because there is a strong publication bias, significant findings are more likely to be published. But if that's the case, then there's a significant distortion and bias in the literature, because then we don't know about the studies that did not find significant results. And by chance alone, there should be those studies, but they are increasingly disappearing. So there are many warning signs that we do have a problem. Second reason is we should do open science because it's closely aligned with our values as researchers. Because even if there were no problems, even if I was completely wrong with what I've said before, open science is still the way to go. The Royal Society for Science, one of the oldest scientific associations, that was founded in the 17th century, had as their claim nullius in verba, which is Latin and which means don't just take anyone's word for it. Show, don't tell. So this is the scientific principle. It's not about authority. It's not about me saying this is true. It's about me proving this is true. But if we don't share our data or our analysis scripts and our syntax, we can't really know, we can't really check whether there might have been any errors all along. We just take, currently it's the usual thing to just take the paper as it is and then see if we can find any errors in the result, but not in the way to the result. Yeah, so this contradicts Emergence Norms. They have a nice abbreviation, the CUDO norms, because it's an acronym which stands for communism. It means that findings in research, they are owned by everyone. It's not a private company. No, in research, we say it's the scientific principles. If you found something, everyone should be able to access this knowledge, and there is no secrecy. It's about universalism. The validity of the results are independent from the participating researchers. It's about the results, not the researcher. And closely aligned, it's about disinterestedness. It's not about personal gains. It's not about our own individual careers or those of our students. It's in general about scientific progress, about advancing knowledge. And the fourth one is organized skepticism. It's at the core of research and the research principle that all claims should be analyzed critically. And everything that I will propound is closely aligned with Emergence Norms, which are at the core of how research should be done. Okay, so let's get going. 5 tips for open science in research. What can we do? First of all, and maybe the most self-evident one, share your data, share your syntax, and share research materials. Nowadays, it's very easy to share data on platforms such as the Open Science Framework or maybe GitHub. It's very convenient. Of course, sometimes it's not possible because of privacy reasons. That should be clear. So maybe some information can't be shared, or maybe some studies, it's just not possible. But I think the default option should be to share, because in most cases, I think it is possible. Then if we conduct quantitative research, why not make it custom or just routine to share your syntax? And this is not, sometimes I hear that open science is for those advanced R people. No, also with SPSS, you can share your syntax with Stata. So most software currently available offers this option. Share your research materials, items, procedures, with overall the aim that others should be able to reproduce your result. If they just download the data, rerun it, and see if they can just reproduce what you've reported in the paper. And then ideally also for their next project, either just directly replicate your study so that they have everything at hand, or maybe use part of your materials to extend your study. Second one, pre-register your studies. What does it mean, pre-register your studies? It means that before running a study, write down what you will do. Write down your, for example, this can be write down your just general research questions. If you have them, write down your hypotheses. If you already know how to operationalize them, your variables, and preferably your analysis. Generally, the more the better, but there's no minimum. So you can start just with your hypotheses, that's it. Or you can, if you will, pre-register your entire introduction, your syntax, everything. There's no minimum, the more the better. And then the idea is to upload this material to a website where it receives a timestamp. For example, as predicted, OSF, or wherever you want. Actually, it doesn't really matter. You can upload a Word document on a public server. And you say you have a timestamp when you uploaded it. And so afterwards, you then conduct your study and you can prove that no, before I collected the data, I already came up with the hypotheses. The general idea is that initially pre-registration is private, so others don't scoop you or your idea. And eventually then it should be made public in order to prevent publication bias. So all pre-registration should become public at one point. Here's a nice pre-registration template on OSF that I've used myself. And I think everyone who's already pre-registered will conclude or will agree with me that just the process of pre-registering your research helps you improve your study, because it helps you think about aspects you have not thought about before. So it's something that I can wholeheartedly recommend. Caveat: pre-registration still allows exploration. This might be one of the most common concerns I hear, but it's invalid. Of course, you are perfectly free to explore your study, do whatever you want, conduct all the analysis you want to do. The only precondition is that in the paper, then be honest and say this is an exploration. And that's the only precondition, and then it's perfectly fine. I value exploration a lot, and I think we all should value it more. Third, submit studies as registered reports. What is this? It's the idea of pre-registration taking further. It's a new submission type. So it's not just a paper, it's a new submission. So what is it? You develop your idea, you design your study, exactly how you will do it, and you submit this plan to a journal. And there it is analyzed whether this is a valid research question, valid type of analysis, whether you've used all the right operationalizations and all that. And if the reviewers think that, no, this is a great study, correct way of analyzing it, you then get a conditional accept. So your paper is already accepted. And then you go about collecting the data and you analyze the data, you write your entire paper, including the results and the discussion part. And then you send this full paper then back to your journal. And there they only check whether you've done what you've promised to do in your initial submission. And if that's what you've done, then you have a guaranteed publication. So journals are not able to reject your paper because you haven't found anything significant. So this is a major means of curtailing publication bias. So it's a submission format. And if you want to do it, you need a journal that offers registered reports. And currently the following com-ish journals offer registered reports: Communication Research Reports, European Journal of Health Communication, Journal of Media Psychology. Media Psychology just recently announced that they'll offer registered reports. Benjamin Johnson, a former FU professor, is a new editor, and this was one of his main first strategies to implement. Nature Human Behavior, if you want to aim high, +1, or Royal Society for Open Science. So there are outlets for communication scholars to publish registered reports. And I hope that it'll be more.
Computational communication research.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I forgot that. Yeah, that also exists. Yeah. Yeah, okay, I should have mentioned it, especially here, I realized. Okay.
And if we don't, then from now on we do.
Oh, you don't? I misunderstood your comment.
No, my comment is that we should definitely do so, and I'm not quite sure whether it's already in our author instructions, and otherwise we'll get it in there as soon as possible, because I totally agree with the call.
Okay, side note, it's not a pre-registered report, it's a registered report. So we have a pre-registration and a registered report. That's how Chris Chambers coined the phrase or the term. Right, next one, fourth one. What can we do as researchers to do open science? Conduct replications. We need to start. We need to do this. This needs to be more common. In other more harder fields, it's the most normal thing that if a physician says that I found this, that other labs repeat it, and only if others have replicated it, it's considered sound. Just generally, I think we should do this more frequently. We should honor it more, and it's just such an integral part of research, and it's a proper contribution to the literature. So there's a nice news journal of media psychology, for example, recently announced that they'll offer a specific submission format for replications. And also, I think human communication research, they also invite communication scholars explicitly to submit replications. So yeah, it's something that is really important. Fifth, collaborate. Why that? Because the outset is that reliable research, so research that has a chance to replicate, needs high statistical power. And often high statistical power is expensive because in communication, we are often analyzing small to medium effect sizes. And if you do that, you just need large samples. And also, if we're interested in finding out how many studies replicate in communication, we would need a large-scale replication effort, and we would need a field-wide approach. And in psychology, not maybe hundreds, but almost hundreds of labs collaborated in order to estimate the replicability of their field. And so we can only do this together. So let's join forces, let's make it routine. If you have a research question, just to ask others to collaborate. So rather do less projects, but with more collaborators that are then more reliable, have better chances of replication. Or maybe look for already existing data sets, large-scale data sets. Collaborate with companies, NGOs. Sometimes they have access to large-scale data that we alone would not be able to collect. So we can be creative, we can extend, and we can leave our own labs and think more as a field, as a community. Okay, so these were 5 tips for research, now to 5 tips for teaching. So these were things I could come up with, I was able to come up with. First, let's make it common to share our teaching materials. I don't know why we don't do this. I think it's in most cases, not all cases, it's possible to do so. And I think the pandemic had shown us, there were many, many researchers who were happy to just upload their slides to YouTube and not just only to their own university service. So there's this great course on structural equation modeling by Sascha Epskamp, for example, which I think is just exemplary. And it's something that there are next to no costs, and it should be something that we more routinely do. So I'm planning to upload the slides from my lecture of last year of winter, but I only decided to do so while doing the lecture. And of course, you have to be careful about copyright infringements and all that. So I first need to check whether it's possible. But if I had decided from the very beginning to upload it later, then I could have paid more attention and then would have been able to upload it. So maybe this is something to make more common. If we are seminars, and especially practice-oriented seminars, why not conduct secondary data analyses? So you here see Google Dataset Search, which is a website that you can use to look for datasets, already existing datasets, and then oftentimes researchers have collected several variables. Maybe you are able to either just reproduce the study or analyze it a little bit differently. And I think, Michael Schako and Philipp Mazur, they've introduced this idea at the University of Hohenheim a couple of years ago. And students did this, and I was amazed by the quality of the results that students were able to produce. I would say highly reliable analyses without the need to collect new data for new questions that haven't yet been asked. And I thought, why not make this more common? There is Cameron Brick, an esteemed colleague of mine, has assembled this Google spreadsheet where he collects publicly available data sets. There's a large list, and there's a treasure trove of data out there that can still be analyzed. Closely aligned to this, and I admit all of this does have a strong quantitative focus, make it common for students to share their syntax with their assignments and what they have to do. And this is also something that Michael and Philip introduced, and I'm currently already also doing. This is also something that I grade. So students get like, I don't know, 2% of their grade or 5% is also their syntax, how they're doing this. Make this just routine. So that it's just normal for us to also later share our code. And learning to code is a specific practice. It takes effort, it takes years. So why not already start during our teaching, our training? Invite PhD students or also MA students to pre-register their thesis. Why not? Why not make this a common thing? I think I've heard from Philip that you are already implementing some of these practices. So I don't know whether maybe Sue is already leading the pack here, but just generally, I think it's often the case that PhD students, they have a proposal, they do have some hypotheses. Why not just pre-register it? Why not make this a common part of a regular part of their routine? And so here is the website as predicted. So that's not OSF, as predicted is one of the first, and there that you could use, for example. And also, I was wondering, and I've heard that others are already doing it, why not start a PhD with a replication? What speaks against this? Replications are important contributions to the literature. And they also, if you have a new research field that you're interested in, and oftentimes there's this one study that's very important to your idea and that you want to build on, why not just replicate it? Thereby you can learn about how to do research, you can learn about the measures, the operationalizations, and then you might be able to confirm it, or you might be able to see, oh, maybe the study was conducted, say, in the United States, and then you're rerunning it in the Netherlands, and there you might say, okay, we don't find it here. Maybe it's a cultural thing. Maybe the original finding wasn't robust. We don't know, but this is something that can be very important and insightful. I'm currently, there are 3 PhDs who are currently applying for a stipend at Vienna, and I've asked all of them whether they might consider doing this. And one student said, yeah, cool, for me, this works great. And so she plans to start with a replication. I just asked her. They are not forced to do so, but in some cases, it might make sense. Okay, last 5 tips. Tips for science to increase outreach. So this is more general. First, publish preprints. If you don't know yet what preprints are, you should know, or you should know now, and we know now, because this is something that I think is really important, and there are also mostly only benefits associated with it, with next to no cost. What is it? So preprints are very common in other fields. For example, in biology, they are common there since decades, and people there are always publishing and sharing preprints. And in some fields, preprints are even more important than the journal publications. The general idea is that preprints are author versions of the manuscript, right? Your own Word or LaTeX version of your paper. And you upload it to a preprint server. So I've just shown you Soak Archive, which would be irrelevant for communication scholars. And here you just upload your version of it. And the general idea is there are several times when you can do this. You can do this already when you finished working on the paper and you submit it. But before you submit it to the journal, you upload it as a preprint. So maybe you have other colleagues comment on your paper, and then you can integrate these comments into your submission later. Or you can share the preprint after the study was already accepted. That's also possible, because that at least helps people who don't have a subscription system by their libraries to also access your manuscript. it's not so nicely formatted, but it's accessible. Most publishers, also Oxford University Press, allows for publishing preprints. Preferred option, if it's possible, not all allow this, is of course to publish the accepted article as a preprint, or if you start with your first initial article, then update it with the final version. But it's always possible to publish your initially submitted version. You own this paper, right? You can always publish it. And you can check Sherpa Romeo to see if your publisher allows this, but most do. So I think thinking of communalism and universalism of Emergence norms, I think it should be able to make our research available, the result, and not to have to pay hundreds of dollars in order to get it, or millions if it scales up. And plus, preprints are cited more frequently. So I don't know whether that's a causal relationship or not, but it's an association that seems to be quite robust, that those papers are cited more frequently.
Can I ask a question, Tobias?
Yeah, sure.
So I can see the benefits in publishing a preprint before you submit it, but I could also imagine that some old-fashioned journals or researchers will then reject it on the grounds of it no longer being anonymous, because if they Google the title,
Yep,
they find the preprint. So I was wondering what your experiences are there. And second point is that almost all publishers allow Dutch researchers to publish their articles open access for free. And then I guess it is not so beneficial to also publish a preprint, because then you just create after acceptance, because then you just create confusion over which is the canonical version.
yes. So the double-blind peer review issue is an issue. There are ways to circumvent it partially. So what we do is we upload a preprint using a different name. The preprint will be the final name of the manuscript, and when we submit a manuscript to the journal, we then use another name, and in the end we will change it back to the preprint name. So if people Google for the preprint, they will not. If people Google for the manuscript title, they will not find the preprint, right? So it's possible to have an autonomous, anonymous submission plus a preprint. But then there's of course social reality. If you are a celebrity and if you publish a preprint, and nowadays almost everyone is on Twitter, and if you do this very openly, people might still know, right? So it could be that that this is a problem. So I currently don't advertise preprints so as compared to normal papers, in order to maintain this double-blind peer review process. But there are also many questions you can ask whether we want this double-blind peer review process to begin with. This is definitely more, debatable. Yeah, but this is also, of course, a question. And yeah, and if we're able to make to your paper to appear as open access, of course, then the only benefit would be to publish it before it's preprint in order to get feedback from colleagues. And yeah, but then there's that, of course, I have published several preprints. So far I haven't yet received much feedback, but this depends on the field. In other fields, people get a lot of feedback and a lot of discussion. So there are some open questions. I continue so that we also on the end have some open discussion. Next one is short. Why not make it routine to share slides and videos of your talks that you do online? So I've just recently started. I've delivered a talk in Augsburg, I think it was, and I've shared it on YouTube afterwards. No cost. Why not do this? Make this more general. Yeah, let's ask journals to implement registered reports, right? So there are next to no cost for journals to do so. And in communication, we still have a shortage of journals offering registered reports. And so this is something where we need, I think all of open science is it's a grassroots initiative, and we need to ask editors whether they would be able to consider offering this publication format.
There is a hidden cost to journals, right? Because if they can filter on exciting results, and if they accept registered reports, they will also get more dull papers of people not finding what they were supposed to find. And that will lower the average excitability of their articles, which can decrease their standing in the indices, which are based on excitability.
Yeah, that's correct. But this will also decrease the soundness of your research, and this will also be rather a tabloid logic and not a research-oriented logic. But I do agree, of course, there are.
I share your ideals, but
yeah, I wouldn't. I think it's a different question whether registered reports are cited less frequently. I think this is also an empirical question. We might be able to answer that, and it could be the exact other way around, right? Because we don't really know, but I see your point. Okay, penultimate one, make open science a criterion for jobs, grants, and awards. And Philip already alluded to it. Currently, there are already positions when they're offered that require candidates to provide an open science statement. And if you want to get funding from specific agencies, they require you to publish open access. And I think we do see a change here because, of course, funders, they have an interest that others can read your work, whereas researchers have the interest to publish as high as possible. But there'll be external forces that will also likely push this change. And last one, foster open science skills, right? Hone your open science skills. Open science doesn't make it easier, that's for sure. Check out the open scholarship knowledge base. There's so much valuable, important knowledge out there that you can use. You can read the Agenda for Open Science to dive a little bit deeper. And there's so much great writing about this. This is really a large-scale movement, and a lot of really excellent researchers have understood or have now been able to produce the momentum of things that we actually know already for decades to introduce this societal change that we need, of course. And I can wholeheartedly recommend to read those two books. The first one by Chris Chambers, the inventor of registered reports. It's more focused on psychology, but most also tries to come. And Science Fictions by Stuart Ritchie is more just general, and it's just a great read, and it's really able to spark some passion about good research. Okay, conclusion. Open science is just science done right. Be the change you want to see, right? Start with your next project. Do it. Focus on getting it right, not on getting it published. Of course, easier to say if you're already tenured, but still, right? It feels better. Focus on research quality, not publication quantity, right? It's not only about our careers. I think less is more. I think we should increasingly understand that we need to work in smaller but more reliable steps. So I value less exciting research that is then more robust. So maybe also we see a shift in the general feeling. Yes, and we owe it to the taxpayer and merchant, because I think that's what society wants us to do: answer research questions and not publish papers. So eventually, I think, or in the end, ultimately, I think this is not a replication crisis. This is a credibility revolution. We are currently experiencing the things that make our research more robust, and it shouldn't be also negative, but rather positive, because it's been bad always, but we are now, I think, improving several things. With that, you can read the literature, and I thank you for your attention.